I saw this lovely style on Pinterest and I wanted to make it. So I went on YouTube to search for tutorials and I found one on Sew with Ijoma. She made it just the way I was thinking of making it, only that the design at the back was different for her own. And the back is my favorite part of this dress. So I decided to go ahead and make it, but then change the back design, and it was a disaster. So in this video, I am going ahead to try it again with a different approach, which I'm thinking will work, but I'll be using my baby mannequin to see how this goes. Here now, I have this fabric folded into two, so I'm using the baby's hip measurement divided by 4 plus 2 inches of allowance. So for the length, I am using a very short length. I mean, it's just a test, so I'm not very strict, but on a normal day, you just use your full length. That's where you want it to stop and add extra 2 inches for allowance. So here I marked the zip allowance 1.5 inches all the way down, and then I ruled a line. Next, now I am from that line marking the shoulder measurement plus half inch. So shoulder divided by 2 plus half inch of allowance. Now on that shoulder line, I am marking the armhole line. I marked 6 in this case since I'm making it for the baby mannequin. It's just small, but the goal is for me to see how this approach comes out on the dress. So next, now I am marking the neck width. I marked 2.5. I will mark it 3 if I was making this for myself or for any other adult. So on the armhole line, I went down by half inch and I made a slant line, as you can see, for the shoulder slope. And then from the armhole, I'm getting the midpoint. I'm going to come in by half inch and connect back to the shoulder line and then curve the rest of the armhole using my armhole curve. So after making this curve now, the next thing, the original dress has a princess dart and also a waist dart, but since this is just a test, I'm just going to use the waist dart to do it for now. So for the back neck depth, I marked 10.5 inches. For an adult, I might go deeper than that, but for myself, I still will not want it to get to my brow point, so I may use 11 if I was making this for myself. So from that zip line, I went in by 1.5 inches and I'm connecting to the neck depth, neck width of 2.5 like that we marked earlier. So from the zip line, I went in by 1.5, which is the same thing I would use if I was making this for myself. Now from the shoulder, I am marking the half length, the hip line, and that's it. Then the length of the dress. So from this zip line again, I am marking the chest measurement, that's the bust divided by 4 if it was for an adult, plus extra 2 inches for allowance. And then on the waistline, waist divided by 4 plus 1 inch for the dart, and then another 2 inches for allowance. On the hip line, hip divided by 4 plus extra 2 inches for allowance, and then I take the hip measurement to the length of the dress. So the same thing I marked on the hip is the same thing I'm going to mark on the lower part of the dress. Using my ruler now, I am connecting all these points together. All the way to the hem. So next now I am marking the waist dart. So from the shoulder to the waistline, I'm going to go in by 3.5 inches from the zip line. You can use your bust span measurement if you're making this for yourself. And then I went up by 3 inches and I went down by 3 inches as well. But for myself, the waist dart stops 1 inch before the bust measurement and then 2 inches before the hip line. So on the waistline, I went out by half inch on both sides of that line, and then I'm connecting back to the beginning and the end of the dart. So I will mark this same dart on the opposite side of this back piece. Then on this neck back neck depth, I came up by half inch. I'm just going to make a line, so we're not going to cut up to that half inch point. We're going to leave that for later. Next, now it's time to start cutting. Okay, first off, I went in by half inch on the waistline, that's for the back. I went in by half inch and then I slanted out to the chest and then to the hip. This is to eliminate any zip bulge and give the back a bit more fitting. Next, now I went ahead and cut starting from the shoulder slope and then the armhole and then the sides. I'm also going to cut out this part, this zip back, center back half inch, and then open the rest of the back piece into two. So I'm cutting out the neckline now. I'm leaving that half inch like so. We're going to cut that later and you will see. So this is it for the back. Like I said, you mark the dart on the other side of the back piece as well, and this is what we have so far for the back. Next is time to cut the front. So for the front piece, I have my okay, so this is how you sew the dart. I was trying to show how the dart will be sewn in, but yeah, that is it. So for the front, I have my fabric again folded into two. This time the hip measurement, which in most cases is the biggest measurement, divided by 4 plus extra 2 inches for allowance and another 1 inch for, no, just 2 inches for allowance. So up here I am marking the shoulder measurement, shoulder divided by 2 plus half inch. I came down and marked the same thing, then I marked armhole of 6 inches. That is because I am making this for my baby mannequin just to test it out. So for an adult, you will mark your armhole there as it is. I marked the waistline and then the hip line, and then I went ahead to mark quarter of the chest measurement here, and then I added extra 2 inches for allowance, and then here I marked quarter of the waist measurement plus 1 inch for that, and then another 2 inches for allowance. The hip line, I marked quarter of the hip measurement plus extra 2 for allowance, and then I took the hip measurement down to the hem of the dress. So using my ruler, I'm going to connect all these points together. So next, now I am going to mark the dart. So from the shoulder to the waistline, I'm marking 3 inches in, 3.5 inches in, and then I came up by 3 inches from that half length and then down by 3 inches. Like I said earlier, for an adult, you use your bust span measurement in, and then for the length of the dart, you will stop 1 inch before your bust point, and then on the down part, you will stop 2 inches before your hip line. and then mark half inch on both sides of your dart line and then connect in a slant to the top and the bottom part of the line. So I'm going to do that on the opposite side as well. For the neck, front neck, I marked 2.5 inches as well for the width, same as the back. And I said if I was making this for myself, it's going to be 3 inches, or for any adult at all. So I went down by half inch on the armhole side and I made a slant. I marked the middle of that armhole and I came in by half inch. I'm going to connect to the shoulder and then use my curve to curve the rest of the armhole. So for the neck depth, the dress has a really high neck on the front, probably what helped the rolled collar to sit where it sits. So I marked 2 inches here, which is the same thing I would mark if I was making for myself. 2 inches for the neck depth on the front. Then the neck width 2.5, 3 inches for an adult. So I have curved the neck line for the front. Next, now I'm going to cut this out, as you can see, starting from this neck and then the shoulder and the sides. After that, I'm going to mark the darts on the opposite side as well. The same thing we did from the shoulder to the half length, from the center point to 3.5, and then up by 3 inches, down by 3, 1 inch before your bust point and 2 inches before your hip line. On the half length, you come out by half inch on both sides and then connect in a slant like so. Next, now I am going to go sew this dart for the front as well as the back, and then we're going to join the back and the front pieces together on the shoulder, just their shoulders together, because we'll be using this now to cut the collar piece. So we're going to go now join using half inch. So after joining them on the shoulder, this is what we have. I've gone ahead to iron the darts and also the shoulder seam. This is it. Now I folded both into two, so the front piece into two and the back piece also sitting on top of each other like so. Now I'm going to get another piece of fabric to use for the collar. So I'm folding this fabric now into two. I'm going to place the pieces on it. So for the front side, I make sure that the folded edge of the dress piece is aligned with the folded edge of the collar piece. So just make sure everything is laying smoothly, as you can see. And then I'm going to go on now and trace the neckline. I'm making sure that what I have there is enough for what I need. So for myself, I will use 6 inches. So I just wanted to use 6 inches here. Although that's too much for a baby. If I was actually making this for a child of that age, I will most likely use 4.5 inches. But yeah, I'm just making sure that everything is aligned. So I went ahead to trace the neckline all the way to the back, all the way to the back like so. After that, I will just move this out of the way, and then from the front now I marked 6 inches here, which is what I will mark if I'm making for myself. It's kind of too much for a baby, but yeah. So on this shoulder point now, you what I noticed at the end was that you shouldn't mark it. It shouldn't be more than your shoulder width. So whatever you're marking at this shoulder point should be exactly your shoulder width or even less. So I'm connecting from that shoulder to where I want my front, like so. And then on this back, that's the back neckline, I marked 3.5 inches. So 3.5 inches, which should be like 4 inches, because remember we marked 3 inches on the neck, we marked 1.5. So we want to be able to have 1.5 at the end when we are done folding and turning the neck point and also joining it to the shoulder. We should have 3 inches left for that space. So next now I am going to cut out the neckline and then the neck depth. Also, another thing again that I noticed that my curve was kind of too much. So you should just focus on connecting from the center point to the shoulder to the back neckline, and that's all. It shouldn't be this curved. Then all the way to this back, this is what we have. Another thing again is that this is a collar, so you may want to attach, no, you need to attach an interfacing to it to give it some form of stability. So I'm going to place this now on another piece of fabric and cut. So I didn't have enough of that satin, so I'm using organza here. So I cut it out the same way. You should do that with your same exact fabric, and then place them right sides together and turn, go sew round using 1/2 inch. And then after sewing, turn it to the right side and iron, and this is what we have. So if you're adding interfacing, which you should, you add it before you turn it to the right side. Like I said, this is just to see if this technique will work, so I didn't bother doing all the extras. So next now we are going to join the collar to the dress. Starting from the center front, I place the wrong side of the dress onto the right side of the collar. So we're going to go sew round, so you can sew it all the way around and then weave it, overlock it, or just try to finish the edges around that place however you want it. So the 1/2 inch I added extra, I am marking it down now, like so. We are going to sew and we are going to cut it out after sewing. Not cut it out, but make like a sharp slant in that direction, like so. So the same thing on this side, I'm marking the 1/2 inch. So where the neckline stopped, I also went in by 1/2 inch, which is where we are going to sew. Stop there and then make that cut like that, just a tiny cut that will not pass where it is sewn. This is going to help us finish the back piece later on after adding the zip. So after sewing, this is what I have now. So I'm going to use my this thing. I only held one part of it, so I'll turn the other part to finish the edges, but you can just sew them together and weave that part or finish it with a bias or something. So now I am cutting that part like so, just in a slant, that way to relax when we turn the collar in with our zip. So this is it now. So you can now go ahead and fold over the remaining collar piece and stitch it down, or sew them together and just weave. No need to start turning over like so. So this is the slant, a little more closer, and this is how I slanted it out. That part is going to fold in when it's time to add the zip. So I've gone ahead to close the zip allowance, and we're going to go add the zip. Ignore the color of this zip. Like I said, this is just a test. So I've added a zip like so. Next, now it's time to finish it. So the zip needs to go in, fold inwards so that it is clean. And then this part as well, we are going to fold it over. So ideally you must have finished that side of your neckline, either weaving or sewing with the bias. So I'm folding the collar piece into two at the back side, just making sure that it is relaxed and not folding or anything. So I saw that it was folding, so I had to adjust. But this is the zip now. This is how it should be. Turn it to the wrong side and then fold the zip allowance over, and that part that we slant, the remaining part that's hanging, is where we are going to sew. I don't know if I'm making sense, but I'm going to do this again so that you will see. By the time we are done, we want something like this at the back. So this is it. That collar piece is going to be inside, and then the zip will also fold to the inside. So the whole finishing is going to happen on the wrong side. This place is not aligned, so I need to adjust it so that it's smooth enough. Then turn to the right, to the wrong side, fold over the zip allowance with the zip on it like that, and then sew. The slant is already there, so it will guide you on exactly where to sew. By the time you are done, this is what you will have on the wrong side. So I'm adjusting because this is very tricky. Any small thing, it's not going to balance. So I keep adjusting until I am sure that it is balanced and sitting properly before I sew. This is why pins are very important. So the zip allowance going in like so. This is it. But then the actual sewing has to happen on the wrong side. So hold them together, fold the zip allowance over that notched part, and then sew it down. And by the time you turn to the right side, everything is going to fall smoothly like so. So I'm going to go sew this now and just finish the sides. Use 2 inches to hold the sides, hem the lower part, and finish the armhole. The original dress has like a basic sleeve, so I am going to link a video to my basic sleeve tutorial on the pattern, and this is the finished look. This is what it has without any interfacing in it, which I believe that by the time I add interfacing it will sit more properly. Thank you for watching.